A very, very warm welcome to all of you students. Now, I've been here, and of course, we've been waiting for a lot of have come online during this process, and my live streaming took some time. And as this took some time, I was just reminded of something. A very, very warm welcome. Now, I've been here, and of course, now, as I'm here talking to you, what was I reminded of is something that I should tell you in priority. Well, what's happening in the corporate world these days? Have you really gone through what I'm up to? After the long fiasco that took place, wherein they went through NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, NCLAT, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, and the Supreme Court in respect of the removal of Mr. Mistry from the Tata board and the subsequent actions, of course. Now they finally, Shapoorji Pallonji Group has decided to sell off their stake in the Tata companies. This, as of now, is a public information. And when it is a public information, it does not really matter if in case someone is taking an advantage of this information and accordingly either buying shares, selling shares, or doing any other action, corporate action in respect of that company. But till the time this information was not disclosed by either of these companies, this was a price sensitive information which was unpublished. Now, when I talk to you about this particularly reminds me of your subject in CS program, which deals with security laws in capital markets, and SEBI, prohibition of insider trading regulations, is an important part of it. Now, before I get into prohibition of insider trading regulations again, because I took up an example from it, let me first tell you how is your subject actually structured like. Let's quickly go and connect ourselves to this particular document, which is a part of your study material of the institute. And as I take you through this study material, please understand it has two components. One is security laws, which covers 70% of, or if I say 70 marks of your course and curriculum. The next would be your 30%, that is capital market and intermediaries. Now, as I take you through this particular subject, let me quickly tell you that we, in the endeavor that is being brought up through this academy, we will not be going through the entire study material, but we would try and deal with you and teach you what the exact concept, what is the exact understanding behind each of these regulations which form part of it. Why? Because all of these are practically applicable if you would be otherwise being in a corporate or if you would be back working as a practicing company secretary. Everyone faces different challenges and everyone, almost if you're dealing with a listed entity, would be required to go through these particular regulations on a daily basis. So this is not just important from the perspective of examination, it is also important from the perspective of the practical aspect, practical importance that this particular subject has. Now, let me quickly take you through this particular document. See, the first regulation you have here would be Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956. So how was the how securities to be dealt with? Then you have definitions pertaining to the securities, shares, stock exchanges. Then what is a recognized stock exchange? Then there were certain words like demutualization and corporatization, because earlier all stock exchanges were not recognized. Right now, India has two recognized stock exchanges, that is the National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange. So how did we come down and transgress from the stock exchange system to the recognized stock exchange system? Then what are the rules which are related to public issue listing of securities? Of course, we all hear about IPO. What comes behind it is what is part of this particular law. Then we have SEBI Act, as in what are the powers of SEBI as an organization, which is spearheading all listed companies. Then what role will a depository have? because we have Depositories Act 1996, which came up, and prior to that, the rules were transgressed and were forming part of other regulations. Then we have ICDR. Say, for example, if you're raising capital for your company, which is a listed entity, LODR, if you're already a listed entity and if you have to go ahead, and then what are the regular compliances you will have to undertake as a listed entity to maintain your listing? Substantial acquisition of shares and takeovers, or as we call as takeover code. So in case if you have a hostile takeover, that is somebody comes and takes over your company's shares and says, I am the boss, or a friendly takeover that you would want somebody else to step in inside your company and at the same time provide you funding and help you in management of the company. Then you have buyback regulations, you have delisting regulations, you have share-based employee benefits regulations, issue of sweat equity, as we say, what you've earned after creating a sweat, prohibition of insider trading regulations. I indeed started with it. Mutual funds, they're subject to market risk, and we should read the offer document carefully before investing. But at the same time, as a student of CS, we should also understand that we company secretaries have an important role when we deal with how and what are these mutual funds, how do we calculate their NAV, what is holding period return, what is the process that you have a mutual fund in process. Then you also talk about collective investment schemes. We talk about ombudsman, or the, if I say ombudsman being an organization where they take you back for grievance redressal. For example, if I'm an individual, I am aggrieved by, say, an act of the company, which is a listed entity, and I cannot get it solved directly, then SEBI, being an ombudsman, would step into that particular role. I can raise my grievance, I can raise my issues which are there to SEBI, and that would help me in settling my issue with the company in which I have invested. Well, that is your 70% of the course. Now coming to the balance 30%. We'll talk about capital market structure, where we talk about the primary market and the secondary market. Primary markets, generally, if we say, we'll talk about when first your company comes into listing, and secondary market is the subsequent trading. And subsequently, we will also talk about in this particular chapter on securities market intermediaries. Now, what is securities market intermediaries? The role and functions of merchant bankers, stockbrokers, syndicate members, registrar and share transfer agents, or as I say, RTAs. Come on, Karvi's case in the recent times has been very famous, where because some of the actions of that particular company drove it down to NCLT. Then, apart from that, you have portfolio managers. You also study portfolio management, some other subject. But what is the theoretical part of it? What is the legal aspect of it? Is forming part of this particular chapter. Then you also have credit rating agencies. We've heard about CRISIL, we've heard about ICRA, we've heard about CRISI. But what exactly is this rating agency? How does it function? Why does it function? Why is it forming a part of our structure? That is also a part of our course. Why? Because we company secretaries are a pertinent part, an inherent part, excuse me, of this particular system. If we do not know this law, we will not be able to guide our clients. We will not be able to function as company secretaries in an organization which is related to this particular aspect. And therefore, we will not be able to discharge our duties in a proper manner. Then internal audit of intermediaries by company secretary in practice is a great avenue. We can conduct internal audit of intermediaries of the stock exchange mechanism. But for that, we will need to be apprised about these laws, because when we go back to their offices to do an internal audit, to do a check, to check their processes, to check their documentation, to check if there are any lapses. And if we ourselves are not educated about that particular law, if you're not aware of regulations that are forming part of it, then we will not be able to discharge our duties properly. And that is the importance that this particular subject has for you practically, and as of now, if I talk about for the purpose of your examination. Now, having gone through what is exactly the breakup of our exam or if I say the subject or the module, let me quickly take you through that how would we be dealing with this particular paper. Let me quickly go for a stop share because obviously some things that we talk in person are much better. Now, if I have to really, like, say, talk about how would I deal with this paper, or probably how I dealt with this paper as a student, not everybody likes reading law. Or maybe at this point of time, when you're still students and you're part of executive program, uh, I cannot say that, yes, everybody would be interested in reading law the first time and that too for examination. You definitely need some guidance. Why? Because most of these laws are till late alien to you. So what we would do is we would conduct classes with you. We would give you colored notes, reference notes, and more than that, at least I can also guarantee for myself, I will be doing a chalk and slate system for you digitally, where you can see it live, how I'm writing, how I'm preparing my notes, and maybe at the same time, you can do the same for yourself in your notebooks as well, and your queries would be taken up live. And when your queries will be taken up live, that becomes an added advantage for you because that is a virtual class where you're sitting with me live, we're dealing with the concepts live, and at the same time, your queries, you can shoot it to me at the same time and we can get it answered. We will also be taking up not just the regulations, but how and what kind of questions the Institute has posed in the earlier years, or maybe the sister institutes of our institute have given in the related topics that we have in our examination so as to prepare you and give you a breather as to what kind of questions can you encounter when you go into the examination hall and the questions are no alien to you. Well, with this, let me come back to the next segment. And my next segment is, see, once we have gone through the subject, once we know what kind of questions are being asked, we should also be prepared to answer those questions. We should know how to go ahead with a question which is purely theoretical and to answer a question which is case-based. And both needs to be tackled in a different strategy. For example, if you have a theoretical question, if you have a theoretical question to answer or encounter in an examination, I'll say encounter more specifically, because sometimes when we are attempting a particular subject question exam for the first time, the question would sound as dragon to us coming closer to me. And I'll be like, oh, I need to fight this out. And then we encounter it and we clear it with the best concepts that we have in our mind. So we will tell you that you have to answer a theoretical question in a specified manner, where you can directly quote the portion of law, state an example along with, and basis the number of marks. How do you build up your points and how do you put up your presentation skills? But if I talk about a case study based question, well, that has a different aspect of answering. Now, for that, again, I'll quickly go for a screen share, my friends. And in the screen share, I will talk to you as to how do you go ahead and answer a case study based question. Now, for example, if you have a question where certain facts have been given to you, maybe I'll use a red pen for a question. That becomes even better. In a case study question, you have facts, you have some provision of law which is applicable, and then you have some dragon balls. Say, answer question number A, answer question number B, and answer question number C. How do you really go about when you answer these kind of questions? The first thing, my friends, which you see in these kind of questions is while you are attempting this in your examination, mind you, while you're attempting these kind of questions in your examination, the first thing that you write in your answer sheet is, well, while I wrote this ANS, do not understand that this is the first thing that I'm guiding you to write, because this is something that you already know. The first thing is you will talk about what is the relevant provision of law which is applicable in respect of the set case. Say if a particular question, since I talked about PIT regulations right in the starting of it, if the particular question deals about some unpublished price sensitive information, and who has been dealing with the unpublished price sensitive information, who has to be held liable for the dissemination of the unpublished price sensitive information, then the first segment would be, the first paragraph here would talk about what exactly is unpublished price sensitive information, who can be held liable. That is the first segment. Second would be facts in brief. Now, here it could happen that your case could have around 5 to 6 lines of the facts of the case. What you have to do here is, in this particular second paragraph of your case question, you have to put it in short, maybe in 1 or 2 lines. You have to summarize what is the exact status of this particular question in respect to the facts. And then in the last paragraph, my friends, you will have to see that what is the solution. And as I say solution, you should not simply jump up and write that this action is valid or this action is invalid. What you will have to write is, in light of the above facts, that's how you should initiate your answer. And this is applicable for all sorts of laws that you're having for your examination. Do not let it be specific only with this particular subject. For any law subject, including taxation, if you have a question, you may answer it in this manner, which is a theoretical question and case-based, and you will secure good marks. So in light of the above facts, it can be stated, do not write held, because generally what is held by the judiciary in the court of law. So what you will write is, it can be stated that, etc., 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 whatsoever the answer is. Now, and your answer shall end here. Now, what I would like to straight off tell to you here is, do not push this portion to the first segment. Do not write the solution at the first in your answer. Why? Well, in case of the answer itself is wrong, what you've taken out is a conclusion or a solution. No one would take the point to read the subsequent portion of your answer. So you should first go ahead and read the question, put up the relevant provision. Well, if your relevant provision is correct, you get some step marks. Then you put the facts in brief. All right, they would understand that you've understood the facts as well. You will again fetch some marks. And then finally, when you have the conclusion, you would have already scored some marks in the step marking system above. You will get the balance marks when your answer is correct. But in case of an incorrect solution, incorrect conclusion, and the conclusion is at the top, my friends, you will lose on the complete marks. So let's, today onwards, take the strategy to answer our case-based questions in this particular manner. And your institute does ask case-based questions, and a lot of them. Now, I quickly move on, since we've been talking, like I started with the PIT regulation. Then I went ahead to give you an example that, okay, in case of PIT regulations, you will have an unpublished price sensitive information and a related practical question as well. Let me quickly deal with and tell you what exactly is an unpublished price sensitive information and who can be held liable for it. If you've been listening for so long, you definitely deserve a bonus. And this bonus can also be the initiation of you to develop an understanding of how to read law and how to understand and interpret law for not just examination, but also from practical perspective. And that is what our aim here is. Now, let me quickly ask you to divide this particular word, UPSI, in 4 segments, or maybe let's do it 3 segments. The first word that you break up here is unpublished. The second word here becomes price sensitive. And third word here is information. Well, you'll be like, okay, we know a lot of examples, but my friends, when you come down to the examination, these examples alone will not fetch you marks. What is important is that you can explain this particular term and thereafter get the desired marks for you to clear your examination with high scores. And this is just a bit of it. Now, quickly, what is unpublished? I come back to the example I started with, that we all know about the Tata and Mystery deal that is now happening. The Mystery Group, the Shapoorji Pallonji Group, they are selling off their stake and making an exit from the Tata companies. Right now, this is published information. That is, it is accessible to the general public and it has been disseminated to the general public. So if it is published and it is accessible and disseminated to the general public, then unpublished automatically will just be the reverse of it. That is, not accessible to the general public. So let me write it here. It is not accessible to the general public. The next term that forms part of unpublished price sensitive information is the word price sensitive. Well, how does the price become sensitive? Either it shoots up high or it comes down low on the basis of certain information which has been released or which is known to me. So therefore, any information which is of such a nature that it may have an impact on the price of the securities of the company shall be known as price sensitive. Let's quickly note it because once notes are ready, it's easier for me to revise at the last day. So let's prepare our notes side by side. The information is of such a nature that it may have an impact on the price of the securities. Example, positively, negatively. Or let me give you another example for this. I have two more. Do you remember Yes Bank account holders were not allowed to withdraw after a specified limit when a moratorium was imposed for around 18 days? This happened very recently. As soon as this information was made public, the shares of that particular company went down. Why? Because the information was price sensitive and negatively the price of the company got impacted. The proof is right there on the stock exchange site. You may go there and verify yourself. And on the other hand, my friends, we all know that Reliance Industries Limited recently conducted its annual general meeting. Well, it was conducted virtually. We were all witness to it. It was right there in GeoMeet. It was streamed live on YouTube. It was there for accessible for the shareholders of the company through their particular portal, which was shared with the shareholders. As soon as they announced they're coming up with GeoMart, and they had a lot of other ventures as well, which they announced at the AGM. And of course, they had people from Google, they had people from Facebook, their respective owners and heads stepping inside that particular AGM to make a statement in respect to the collaboration. The prices rose positively. Further adding to it, last month there was another news. They acquired the Future Group retail segment. Many of you would know Big Bazaar. This is now owned by Reliance Group under the GeoMart system. Well, with this kind of a news shooting up, one, prices of Reliance Industries Limited shot up. Why? Because they came up with an acquisition of business. Prices of Future Group also rose up. Why? Because prior to that particular date, when they were debt laden, at that point of time, since they had a lot of debt on their head and they had nothing else to do, the shareholders had lost confidence in that particular company. The price of the security of the Future Group had gone down, but as soon as this information came, the prices went up again. So this price sensitivity could be positive as well as negative. The last term out of UPSI that I'm going to discuss right here is the word information. Well, this could be any information which is related to the company or the securities of the company. I've just given two examples pertaining to Yes Bank and the Geo as well as Future Group transaction. So quickly complete your notes here related to the company or the securities of the company. Now, before I close down on this little topic for this particular session, let me quickly remind you that whenever you hear the word UPSI, you should always correspondingly remember whether this UPSI is in the knowledge of an insider or an outsider. And this is important. Why? Because that is where the basis of this particular set of regulations that we in short call the PIT regulation rests in and rests in. And to in case if you want to still continue to understand what this regulation and the other regulations are, our team at Shilpi's Academy is right here with you. We will facilitate your learning and be part of your journey of clearing CS executive and further also in the process of you becoming a company secretary in due course of time. With that, what I would like to state is we will shortly be sharing a link out here for all of you where you can quickly go in, register yourself, pay the registration fees, and join in for our classes of our subjects. I'm specifically talking about my subject, which deals with security market and security laws and capital markets. But I also talk about the other subjects as well, which are being taught here by an amazing team. So in case if you want us to be your partners in your journey of becoming company secretaries, do join in and let's see you soon. With that, I sign off for the day. Namaste.